Welcome to Underground Crypto.
Hey, it's the Underground Crypto back at it again. And I set out the alarm for two reasons. One, there's potential news for Stellar XLM. And number two, I'll be announcing the winners for the 100 XLM as part of the 500 XLM. So we have a big show today. Big show. So we're going to dive right into it. So there's a video that came out a couple of days ago. This video from Stransberry Research. And they interviewed a Canadian businessman. His name is Frank Giustra. Also a global philanthropist, a billionaire. So what he's saying Bitcoin is a potential threat to central banks. If there's a potential threat for central banks, how will they deal with it? Will they look to undermine Bitcoin? Will they want to issue their own digital currency and slow down old grandpa, Bitcoin? There is a potential for huge Stellar, the sleeping giant, move on this news in the short term and the long term. So we're going to look at this video clip and we're going to look at it in depth and talk about it and see if we should take Frank serious. Should we take him serious? And if we take him serious, this has strong involvement with the sleeping giant, like I mentioned. And I'll explain why. So we're going to jump into the video. And the first segment, this is where he talks about gold versus Bitcoin. And we're going to listen to this for a few minutes. I think it's important to listen to this. And then we're going to dive more into it of Bitcoin roadblocks, how there's a potential stellar involvement. So turn up your speakers as we dive into it.
I think with respect to gold versus Bitcoin, which seems to be the current debate, I just think that people should stop arguing about this, make your choice, buy one or the other, and shut up. I don't envy you having to referee between Peter Schiff and Max Kaiser. You know, these two are going at each other, and it's getting ugly. Or just buy both. You know, I have my own opinions about Bitcoin, but that doesn't make them gospel. Okay, I don't have a crystal ball. I just have opinions that are based on my understanding of what is happening out there, what's driving gold, what's driving Bitcoin. And so I think, Bitcoin, I think could go a lot higher in the short and near term, okay? A lot higher. Now, do I believe it, as some of the debate that's taking place now, which I don't think should be a debate, is will it replace gold? I don't think so, for a lot of reasons. And I think if you boil it down to just a simple way to put it, gold has 3,000 years history as being a trusted store of value. It's never, ever failed in 3,000 years. Bitcoin is less than a decade old and is just now being viewed by the investing audience as a store of value, okay? Until it reaches near universal adoption, like gold has universal adoption as a store of value, a store of wealth. Until it reaches that, you're speculating, what you're doing is speculating that it will reach there. And until it does, you are playing the greater fool game.
He says that until it reaches adoption, and we could look at, and I did show this in previous videos. So gold, as of May 2020, 10 trillion. So this is the store of value here. So you could see where banks, whales, billionaires are putting their money. 10 trillion in gold. As of May 2020, cryptocurrency was 244 billion. Right now it's at 1 trillion. So it's making its climb up there. But can it make it to the level of where gold is at? This is what he was saying in that clip. So we're going to continue with the clip. Gold versus Bitcoin. Gold versus old grandpa. And then we're going to dive further into this interview.
So you're hoping that you buy it, somebody else is going to pay a higher price. And right now it's in that mania stage of, in this debate of being bought up for that reason, that it will eventually reach that stage. And it may, but I think it's a long, long way off for a whole host of reasons. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to go a lot higher, which I personally think it will. I think it's going to do what some of these people are predicting and get up to a much higher price than it is now. But that doesn't make it. So if I had a choice of where to store my wealth, where I can sleep at night, it's going to be gold. Absolutely, it's going to be gold. If I want to make money because I think something's going higher, I'll buy Bitcoin. But they're two very different things. And I think we're years off from it reaching the stage where it can even make the argument that it's going to compete with gold.
So we hear there, he makes a great argument, gold versus Bitcoin. In the next segment, he's going to talk about Bitcoin's roadblocks. So let's dive into it.
And I think there are going to be roadblocks along the way that it's going to have to overcome it, and it may overcome these roadblocks. And they're regulatory roadblocks, they're volatility roadblocks, there are it's how new it is, its own history. And I think it's that the cost of using Bitcoin for transactions, all of these things are potential roadblocks along the way.
So now we hear the roadblocks he just mentioned. And now we get into the real discussion. We will hear how the best blockchain out there can fill the need and has the best use case. So we're going to listen to this.
I'm especially concerned about what governments and central banks will do if Bitcoin ever becomes a threat, a real threat to their own sovereign currencies. As you know, a lot of central banks are contemplating issuing their own digital currencies, and they're not going to want that competition there, and they're going to make it very difficult. Governments and central banks will make it very difficult for Bitcoin to become universally adopted. They'll put roadblocks along the way.
There we have it. So this is where Stellar, it could help some central banks and governments issue their own digital currency. We just heard him say if they see that Bitcoin's a threat, which I know they see Bitcoin as a threat already, they will be issuing their own digital currency. We've already seen Ukraine. The U.S. government is involved with Stellar discussing. Stellar will make transactions faster than Bitcoin. We know how slow Bitcoin is. It helps solve the cross-border payments issue. You could tokenize any form of asset. You could tokenize gold. So Stellar can solve that debate. And as he mentioned, if they see central banks and governments, Bitcoin as a threat, they will handle it. So we're going to listen to more of the clips. And this one now is where they talk about the threat even more.
And I know a lot of people, I've watched all of the YouTube videos with all of these really smart guys talking about why they can't take down Bitcoin, even if they wanted to. And I've read and listened, and I think, I beg to differ. I think that you can never underestimate the resolve of governments and central banks when they're trying to protect their currency. You've heard of currency and capital controls. They've been part of our history in many countries, including the U.S. It came in the form of making the ownership of gold illegal in 1933, which lasted 40 years. That was a form of capital control to protect the U.S. dollar. You saw it in pre-1979 Britain, where there were currency controls. You saw it in South Africa. You saw it in pre-war Germany. You saw it as recently as 2015 in Greece. Okay, so currency and capital controls, or a method by which to use that philosophy against Bitcoin, is a possibility, and you have to take that into account.
So there you have it. Currency and capital control against Bitcoin. That's happened in the past, as he mentioned, and something that they could potentially use again. Because Bitcoin, in my opinion, is a serious threat. Very serious. We see how it went from 244 billion to over $1 trillion. And we're going to hear him talk more on this, of how the undermining of Bitcoin can happen.
So, although I think that Bitcoin's going to go a lot higher, I don't think it's anywhere near replacing gold. And I don't think we're seeing any evidence that the major owners of gold, the institutions, are switching from gold to Bitcoin. You're seeing obviously a few big names like Paul Tudor Jones. I know he's been a big advocate of this, and I'm sure he's going to make a lot of money out of this. But it's not a general view in the investing public, and certainly not with the institutions, and certainly not with the central banks. Central banks own gold. They don't own Bitcoin. And gold is a core part of their currency reserves and always will be. And if they do anything, they will issue their own digital currency. They're not going to be buying Bitcoin, because they're going to try with all their power to undermine Bitcoin. And so that's my view on it.
There he says it again. They will issue their own digital currency. And we know that Stellar Network can do that, can enable that. We've seen it already. We've heard about it already. So this is the second time he said it. So potentially some great news in the short term and long term for Stellar. Not financial advice, not a financial advisor, for entertainment purposes only, but you gotta make sure the bag is flooded. Because if now these central banks, governments utilize Stellar heavily, we are talking some big numbers for the bag that you hold. Life-changing wealth. But also the benefit that it brings to this world. All right, this is the last clip. And then we'll find out the winner of the 100 XLM.
But your point about regulatory, crackdowns, we're already seeing it in the UK. HSBC, saying they're not going to accept payments of Bitcoin or perform transactions with Bitcoin. So really, know your client to the extreme happening in the UK with Bitcoin. Just a note about, when we say, or I guess Goldbug's biggest beef with Bitcoin is when people say, well, it's a better store of value than gold. The argument there is really like, how can something that volatile, that can correct 30% in a day, be a wealth preservation?
Well, it can't be until, as I said, until reaches near universal adoption, that will lower the volatility. Right now, there aren't. Bitcoin is very tightly held relative to gold. It's a small market cap, and it's very tightly held relative to gold. So it can move. It's going to be way more erratic. Its volatility is going to be all over the map. And so that, to me, is not a store of value. That's, you're buying something and you're speculating that something will happen. And two very different things.
There you have it. He makes a great point there. Once there's more Bitcoin held, that will lower the volatility. And right now it is very volatile. Very volatile. And they did mention 2 articles here. So this is the first article here where ECB's Christine Lagarde says speculative Bitcoin needs global regulation. So we see that this most likely will happen sooner rather than later. 5 years from now, the European Central Bank chief added there will be a digital euro, hopefully no more than 5 years, which struck me. I would think it would be a lot sooner than 5 years. And this was the other article here where Bitcoin holders barred from depositing profits in UK banks. So we could see their potential undermining of Bitcoin. All right, so we're going to jump into it right now. Let's get right to the winners. So let me know what you think of that article. Do you think central banks will be planning to stop Bitcoin's threat? And do you think Stellar XLM can be the enabler to bring digital currency to central banks? All right, so we're going to look right into it now. So first, I'm going to give out the 10XLM. We had actually 2 winners. I couldn't determine who got the answer correct first. So there's 2 winners. And the questions were name of the movie, which was Bright. What year did it come out? 2017. And the names of the actors in the cover. It was Lucy Fry and Joelle. So the winners are Adhera Suri. So Adhera was a previous winner of the 10XLM. She won another contest. And Mr. Roshi. So they both submitted around the same time. So congrats to you. And now the winner of the 100XLM. So last winner was Brian XLM. He still has to reach out to me. And the current winner, Marcus Williams. Marcus, congrats. You're the 100XLM winner. I'll be sending you my email, and I'll send that over to you tomorrow. All right, so that's a wrap. A reminder, Done Deal Dixon will be coming out soon. I'll be dropping that. All right, thanks a ton for watching. And also, I'm thinking of another 100XLM in a couple of weeks I'll be giving away. So subscribe, like the channel. Don't forget, tell your friends. Stand clear of the closing doors. The next stop for Stella is the moon. Let's get it.
We don't have that much competition. They would use Stellar to make their payments faster.